The best way to cook quinoa. It might be challenging to find the ideal method for cooking quinoa such that it is consistently light and fluffy. I've been eating quinoa for a while, but it took me almost as long to figure out how to cook it without making it too mushy or too crunchy. However, I have now discovered the greatest method for cooking quinoa, which yields consistently flawless quinoa when done on both the stovetop and in my Instant Pot 6-quart duo. In recent years, I've started making quinoa the main ingredient in several of my rice-based meals. For a speedy morning dish or a wholesome snack, we also include it in our recipe for no-bake quinoa bites and cinnamon apple breakfast bowls. One of the healthiest foods available is quinoa. It is one of the few plant meals that has all 9 necessary amino acids in addition to being high in protein. Additionally, it naturally lacks gluten. Actually a grain crop, quinoa is farmed for its nutritious seeds. This common staple, pronounced quinoa, has been farmed in South America for countless centuries. It has become increasingly well known as one of the top superfoods that are available to consume everywhere in the globe, and this trend is continuing. White, red, and black are the 3 hues that quinoa comes in. Based on color alone, there are no discernible nutritional differences. Quinoa comes in 2 varieties, white and multicolored, and is available in the majority of food shops. Your preference for a serving presentation is truly entirely up to you. There are a few tricks to cooking quinoa that apply regardless of the color you purchase. The ideal quinoa cooking method. 1. Be careful to rinse your quinoa first. If the outside layer is not removed before cooking, the finished product will taste harsh. To keep your quinoa from tasting harsh, be careful to rinse it with cold water using a fine mesh strainer. Rinse it with cold water for no more than a minute. Because quinoa is a tiny grain and can flow through bigger strainers, make sure to choose one with a fine mesh. 2. If you have the time, toast your quinoa in a hot pot or using the Instant Pot's sauté setting. Simply heat your saucepan without any oil, then add the quinoa when it's hot. Once you start to smell it toasting, just stir for 3 to 5 minutes. Quinoa that has been lightly toasted enhances the flavor and makes for an excellent side dish. 3. The water ratio given in the directions of the bag or box may not be the most appropriate for light and fluffy quinoa, depending on your cooking source. When I first started cooking quinoa, I carefully followed the directions on the package. The quinoa I got was mushy, and neither the flavor nor the texture pleased me. However, I've subsequently discovered the ideal water-to-quinoa ratios based on the stovetop and Instant Pot cooking methods. Instant Pot or a stovetop. Comparatively speaking, the stovetop method will require more water than the Instant Pot quinoa. This is because, in contrast to cooking on the stove, pressure cooking prevents water from escaping. However, using the instructions below to cook quinoa will always produce light, fluffy, and properly cooked quinoa that you can consume on its own or incorporate into other dishes. Ingredients. 1 cup of raw quinoa. If using an Instant Pot, reduce the amount of chicken broth from 2 cups to 1 cup. To taste, kosher salt. Instructions. Instructions for a stovetop. Pour the quinoa into a colander with a fine mesh and rinse it for a minute under cold running water, agitating the colander to ensure that all of the quinoa is washed. Good drainage. Add the washed quinoa and water or chicken broth to a medium pot. Over high heat, bring the mixture to a boil. Reduce heat to a simmer if it starts to boil. Cook the food until all of the broth or water has been absorbed. It will take around 10 minutes to complete this. Reduce the heat setting slightly to maintain a moderate simmer as the quinoa cooks. After turning off the heat, cover the pot and leave it alone for 5 minutes. With a fork, fluff the quinoa after removing the cover. To taste, add salt to the dish. Directions for an Instant Pot. Fill the Instant Pot's liner with 1 cup of water. Rinse the quinoa in a sieve with fine mesh for 1 minute. In an oven-safe dish that fits your Instant Pot, combine the rinsed quinoa with 1 cup of water or broth. The bowl should be set on top of the trivet that has been added to the Instant Pot. Manual or pressure, lock the lid in the sealing position. On high pressure, cook for 1 minute. 10 minutes should be given for natural pressure release, before any last-minute pressure release. Use a fork to fluff, then add salt to taste.